There's a ton to talk about from this week in fantasy football. We're going to go through the big risers, the big fallers, and how things are now shaping up as we're getting really to the halfway point of the season and more than halfway point for our fantasy football leagues, where we are now through 7 weeks, which is about halfway to the playoffs. So things are shaping up to be pretty interesting. Let's go through the biggest risers and fallers in this week. We'll go through every game, talk about every storyline, what you need to know from week 7 in fantasy football. Let's start with the game that just happened. The New York Jets obviously traded for Davante Adams this week. This was a huge storyline. Davante going back to play with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he magically healed his hamstring, and so everybody was like, oh, I guess this guy's okay. And as it turns out, unless I'm mistaken, Garrett Wilson doubled him up on production this week. So with Davante, I guess we'll start there. I honestly, he had 9 targets, so he was tied for the team lead in targets. I expect them to get on the same page more as they, get a couple practices in and things like that. Brees had he's had a couple games now where, 26, 21 points, kind of bouncing back from a couple single-digit weeks he had a couple weeks ago. And so you're seeing this from Brees. You're also seeing this from Bijan. We'll talk about in a little bit. But some of these stud running backs that we talked about had been a little bit disappointing. Some of these guys are actually starting to bounce back. And Brees had a pretty good game tonight. 6 of 9 receptions, which is nice. And then, in terms of the other guys in this game, Lazard still continues to be at least somewhat relevant, which is interesting. On the other side of the ball, everybody was, people were upset that they benched Justin Fields. Russell Wilson had 24 fantasy points tonight. Obviously, he had how many touchdowns? Two touchdowns tonight, and then the rushing touchdown again in the fourth quarter. Najee got a touchdown. And we mentioned, when Najee does start getting touchdowns, he's going to have 16 to 20 point upside. And in the last couple of weeks, 16 to 20 points. So with Najee, this is fairly encouraging if you have Najee Harris. And also the way that the offense looked tonight against the Jets defense, that's not bad. It was encouraging for you as well. Jaylen Warren was the running back 2 there tonight. Pickens, look, we said it on the show this week. Pickens was going to get a pretty big boost from Russell Wilson. It's exactly what you saw. He was targeted 9 times, caught 5 of those for 111 yards, which is, par for the course for Pickens. He's going to get a lot of yak. He's going to be a big play guy, but he had a touchdown, and that's the difference here. The difference is that Russell Wilson was able to get George Pickens a touchdown. And so that's what we're looking for. That's really the only other big storyline from this game. And so the Steelers offense is going to be interesting in terms of Najee and George Pickens moving forward to kind of see how they perform rest of the season. Let's talk about KC San Francisco. Obviously, the big news from this game is that Brandon Ayuk is going to probably be out for the year. He had a knee injury. It looks like it's an ACL or something like that, or a meniscus. And so it's not looking good. So there are going to be some pivotal waiver claims you're making from this 49ers offense. A 49ers team is now 3-4, which is flying under the radar a little bit. But in terms of the Chiefs, Kareem Hunt had 22 points today. He continues to be the workhorse back. Carson Steele and Samaje Perine combined for 8 carries to Kareem Hunt's 22. So obviously not even close there in terms of workload. And then the receiving game, we continue to see Xavier Worthy, after his big game in week 1, has not cracked 20 points again. He did have 8 targets today, but again, he only caught 3 of those. So the targets are a really good sign for Xavier Worthy. You're looking for him to improve on that in the next couple of weeks, but still not catching a lot of those targets, and that's kind of what we're concerned about. And then Noah Gray outproducing Travis Kelce. This Chiefs team really is all over the place. By the way, Patrick Mahomes, you can drop him in your fantasy leagues. Purdy had 20 points, wouldn't drop him. Jordan Mason only had 9 points today. And then the leading fantasy wide receivers for the 49ers today were Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall. And again, we had Debo go out early in the game. Ayuk obviously got hurt, had 6 targets before he did get hurt, but that's going to be a permanent thing now. And then Kittle obviously was the leading, technically the leading receiving asset. He was a tight end, but 15 points for Kittle. Kittle's been extremely solid this year. Was the tight end one coming in, still has 15 points. Him and Bowers are the standard right now for fantasy football. So those are really the only storylines from this game, where I think everybody kind of expected this. Obviously both good defenses, but not super fantasy. You're the fantasy guys in this game that you needed to produce. Pretty much none of them produced. And in this game is kind of the opposite with Washington. Jaden Daniels, obviously with the rib injury. I think he's going to be okay based on what I heard. So I think it's probably going to be a week he'll be out, if that. That's good news. Brian Robinson still got a touchdown today, so he was productive. Terry McLaurin still caught 6 passes for 98 yards today, so that's a good sign. And then Zach Ertz is the clear tight end one and a good waiver pickup, a good waiver option if you have him. And then the other side of the ball, Chuba Hubbard's day was salvaged by a fourth quarter touchdown. He didn't really do anything, and the Carolina offense looked terrible. They're now 1-6. None of these receivers did anything, including Deontay Johnson, who we've been a little bit higher on. JT Sanders had a pretty good day, but again, this was kind of a nothing burger game. Going over to the Vegas Rams game, starting with Vegas, I mean, two things from this. Number one, Alexander Mattison is going to be a hot waiver pickup, and also, 23 carries, 92 yards. He's getting the volume there. You love to see it. He also has gotten 5, 6, 8 points from receiving upside in full PPR leagues over the past 3 weeks. And so that's encouraging. And he is somebody that he looks like he's going to be the lead back there in Vegas. Trey Tucker was the leading receiver with Jacoby Myers out. Things are going to be different without Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is still a very good receiver for them, in my opinion. And then Brock Bowers still had 14 targets today, caught 10 of them, had 93 yards, 19.5 points in full PPR leagues. Brock Bowers is a league winner this year. Make no mistake. If you have him, you should be feeling really good. Kyron Williams continues to produce when he's on the field. He's the running back 4 with the bye week coming into today. He's still scoring touchdowns. He has scored a touchdown in every single game this season. It's crazy. It's like touchdowns are volatile, but not for Kyron Williams, evidently. Tutu had 11 points. Colby Parkinson did a little bit. And so, again, the main storyline here was Brock Bowers is continuing to just dominate anybody in his path. The Philly game, obviously Saquon Barkley revenge game. He comes out and scores 26 points in fantasy football, 176 yards, and then had a touchdown as well. It had been a couple games since he had a touchdown, and obviously the last couple games not great. He came back and looked better today. A.J. Brown came and obviously had 20 points. Devonta Smith notably did nothing today at all, which was a little bit uncharacteristic of him, at least based on what we've seen so far this season. The New York Giants, obviously, one of the biggest storylines here is the running back share. Tyrone Tracy was the lead back in terms of opportunity there. In terms of snaps, he way out-snapped Devin Singletary. And yeah, they're going to be easing Devin Singletary back in. And he only out-carried Devin Singletary by 1. Out-targeted him by 2, though. Ran a ton more routes than Singletary. And so keep an eye on that. I think Tyrone Tracy is somebody you could be looking to buy low in your fantasy football leagues. Wandale, still 6 receptions for only 23 yards. I don't think that you are looking at Wandale and seeing somebody who's going to be like highly fantasy productive every single week, even though the PPR stuff has been there. And then that's pretty much it from this game. It was mostly on the Eagles side of the ball. Malik Neighbors, I will touch on. He came back from injury. He had 8 points. He didn't really do anything today. So obviously he's going to have some better weeks. This game was awesome. This game was a good game to have fantasy assets in. So if you have any assets from this game, odds are you're feeling fairly decent about it. Start with Gibbs. Gibbs, 32 points today. Obviously, you had David Montgomery going out with the injury in the first half that happened? He outcarried Montgomery by 6 today, but he outscored him by 24 points. And so 4 receptions, 44 yards. He obviously had the big plays. Gibbs looked amazing today, which is really encouraging. Amon-Ra St. Brown also had 8 receptions, 112 yards, and a touchdown. Had 25 points in full-point PPR leagues, which you should expect from him. Continuing, and actually in this game, what you really saw, so 4 receptions from Gibbs, 8 receptions from Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got 1 catch from J-Mo today, which I think, again, you're going to have boom-bust weeks. He's had weeks now of 0.6 points and 1 points. The floor for J-Mo is 0. The ceiling for J-Mo is 25, right? So just one of those bust weeks for J-Mo. And Sam Laporta with his, at this point, signature bust week. He's not been doing anything this year. And, we advocated to sell him high after last week. And I hope if you have him, you were able to move him. On the other side of the ball, Aaron Jones had a big play right to start the game. That was an immediate 10 points. Finish was 20 points. Aaron Jones, when he's been on the field, even though he's been injured, he's been fairly productive this year. He's been somebody that I feel like has been a pretty good pick at price in fantasy football. And then Justin Jefferson, obviously, 21 points, 7 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. And Justin Jefferson has continued to look good. He was the wide receiver 8 coming in today with the bye week. So he continues to produce if you took him in the first round. He was a great pick this year. This game sucked. I hated this game. I hate the Colts. Richardson is droppable. Goodson is maybe, again, he was somebody last week we were telling you to pick up because he's a lot better than Sermon, but I expect JT to be back next week. The receivers are a non-factor without Joe Flacco. They're absolutely a non-factor. On the other side of the ball, Achane came back from concussion, had 10 points, and that's literally it. I guess I have to talk about Jonnu. Jonnu had 23 today. I mean, Jonnu Smith, it was a combination of Tyler Huntley and Tim Boyle, and Jonnu Smith almost beat the Colts, the healthy Colts. So that's about how I'm feeling right now. Jonnu is still going to be on most waivers. He's only rostered in 7% of leagues. At this point, I don't know how much Tua targets him when he comes back, and Tua is nearing a return. But if the backups play another week, I think Jonnu could be a good streaming option. This game, C.J. Stroud obviously only threw for 86 yards. It was the big storyline. Tank Dell had dropped a touchdown that would have given him quite a few points in the day. Instead, he finishes with 0 points, 0 of 4 on the day. Joe Mixon had another 2 touchdowns, another 26 points for Joe Mixon, which 20 games of 26, 8, 27, and 26 when he's been on the field this season. So pretty impressive so far from Joe Mixon. Stephon Diggs only had 7 points. It was just an all-around kind of crappy day for the Texans offense. So, obviously missing Nico hurt in this game. And the Packers looked good again. Josh Jacobs, get this, scored a receiving touchdown. Probably the biggest news of the week in fantasy football. But again, you see Josh Jacobs when he's getting these touchdowns. I mean, 16 points and 20 points in 2 of his last 3 games when he's actually scored a touchdown. The touchdowns are going to come more often for Josh Jacobs, and it's going to benefit your fantasy team because, again, if you're not selling on him, not trying to sell low on him, it's a good thing. Romeo Doubs had 8 receptions for 94 yards today. He had 17 points. Wicks had 13 points. Jaden Reed had a quiet day, only had 4 targets and only caught 2 of them and only had 10 yards. So Tucker Kraft had a touchdown catch as well. This Packers offense continues to be very productive for fantasy football. The battle for Ohio. Chase Brown, Zach Moss didn't do anything today. T. Higgins continues to be really good. At the same time, Jamar Chase continues to be very good. T. Higgins, when he's been on the field, 18, 14, 29, 12 points, and then 6 points in his first week. Since he's come back, he's been very solid for your fantasy football team. And Jamar Chase obviously continues his run this year. Was the wide receiver 2 coming into this week. So both of these guys can be productive together. I think T. Higgins is obviously much cheaper, but T. Higgins continues to get more targets than Jamar. This shouldn't surprise you, but it is worth noting that he is getting a ton of first read plays in that offense over Jamar Chase. It has nothing to do with the talent level or anything. It's just the type of receiver they are and how they're going to use them. And then I don't think the Titans did anything in this game. The Cleveland game was, the Browns just, man. Obviously losing Deshaun is huge. I don't think any of these guys here, Winston or Robinson. Winston may, if he becomes the permanent starter there, maybe he becomes something that you want to think about. I don't even see that happening, honestly. Chubb had 10 points in his return. It was great to see him back. Obviously had a touchdown, but didn't really do anything else because he was pretty inefficient, which I think you would expect from a guy who just came back from getting his leg blown to pieces. Cedric Tillman was a big story here. We'll talk about him in a video tomorrow. 12 targets, 8 receptions. They said he was going to work his way into a starting role after Mari Cooper left, and you saw it happen. David Njoku, 14 targets, 76 yards and a touchdown. Again, like these two guys, this could be a storyline depending on who is the quarterback for the rest of the season. But, I mean, I think in my opinion, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, David Njoku, I think it's an upgrade for if they move off of Deshaun Watson, or if Deshaun Watson is not going to be playing there this year. So obviously hope Deshaun Watson is okay, but yeah, at the same time, like probably not hurting our fantasy teams. The Tennessee Titans. Pollard looked solid. He only had 8.5 points because he didn't have a touchdown. Nobody else did anything. The Bills were interesting. Josh Allen had another good day. Ray Davis actually outproduced James Cook in this game. So you saw Ray Davis only get 5 carries to James Cook's 12 carries. But again, Ray Davis was a lot more efficient with his touches than James Cook was. You still had a James Cook touchdown in this game, but no targets today for Cook. Ray Davis still continues to look like a really good runner. It's going to be interesting to see how the Bills continue to break up that running game and see if they continue to give Ray Davis a pretty large share of things. That's going to be a big storyline for this week. And Ray Davis, again, is only rostered in 28% of your sleeper leagues. And so definitely keep an eye out for some analysis on that in a video tomorrow. Cooper caught a touchdown in his first week, which is great. You love to see that from Amari Cooper. He did only have 5 targets. He actually was out-targeted today by Keon Coleman, of all people. As you can see, this is the Flock League I've got pulled up here. I own Keon Coleman. 4 receptions for 125 yards. Some encouraging stuff today from Coleman, honestly. Like, yeah, a lot of it was big play yak stuff, and that's totally fair. But it also got, he also drew up a play for him where he was the hot route. Like, I mean, it's looking maybe better. But you would also suspect from a schematic standpoint, Amari Cooper should help Keon Coleman, right? And I think you saw that, play out a little bit today. The Titans were down their best 2 cornerbacks today. Shakir's still solid. He's been pretty solid all year, honestly. And then Kincaid had 8 points. So again, more of the same from Kincaid. Like you're not seeing the ceiling from him yet. I don't know if you will, but it's going to be interesting. It feels like there's going to be even more target competition there. So let's go over to Seattle now. And again, this is going to be Geno. Geno obviously had another good game. Geno's been fairly fantasy productive this year. Kenneth Walker had an amazing catch. He also had a rushing touchdown. And so Kenneth Walker, when he's been on the field, man, I would bet when Kenneth Walker has been on the field in the weeks he's been on the field, he's been the running back 2 or 1 this year. Kenneth Walker is probably a top 5 back rest of the season. He did only have 2 targets today, so you didn't see like the PPR scam Kenneth Walker, but you do see Kenneth Walker continuing to score touchdowns in that offense. And even though Zach Charbonnet, you saw him in the game a lot on 3rd down, in 2-minute drills, stuff like that. A lot of people will look at the usage and be a little bit worried about maybe Charbonnet's going to. No, it's all the touchdown upside touches. Kenneth Walker is getting them. That's pretty much all you need to know. DK obviously had 19 points before he went out, or almost 20 points before he went out with an injury. This will be one to monitor. I think the 2 biggest beneficiaries from this are Jackson Smith-Njigba and Tyler Lockett, obviously. JSN in particular has been getting a pretty good amount of targets. They got the same amount of targets today, and Tyler Lockett outscored him. But, with JSN, I still keep waiting for him to kind of blow the top off this thing consistently, and it's still not happening. Maybe this is it. Noah Fant is also a pretty decent waiver option for tight end if you're still streaming tight end. He continues to get some good targets. This Atlanta offense, Kirk Cousins obviously not fantasy productive today, but Bijan Robinson was. And this is really important here. Again, we saw Bijan Robinson. He was pretty disappointing through the first 5 weeks of the season. 2 20-point games in a row, 23 and 25 points in full-point PPR leagues. This is why you drafted Bijan. If you're a Bijan owner, you have to be really encouraged, and hopefully you were able to get through that with a decent record. Drake London continues to be somebody, if you drafted him in the 2nd round, you feel excellent about that. 6 catches today for 63 yards and a touchdown. Darnell Mooney still, at semi-flexible levels, and then Kyle Pitts continues. Kyle Pitts, 15, 10, and 13 points in his last 3 games. Kyle Pitts has been solid, honestly. And so I expect Kyle Pitts to keep kind of taking steps forward, but the target volume alone in the last 3 games for Kyle Pitts, 8, 5, and 9 in the last 3 games. You're really, really encouraged by that. So it was honestly, a fairly decent game for fantasy football. This was the London game. Really the big stories out of this. Hasty obviously had a touchdown but didn't do anything else. Everybody else in the Patriots besides Hunter Henry wasn't any good. Hunter Henry had 17 points today. Again, another solid streaming option for tight end. Douglas didn't really do anything. Jalen Polk didn't do anything. He missed his opportunities. Osborne obviously had the touchdown salvage today, but that didn't mean anything. Tank Bigsby had 24 points today in Travis Etienne's absence. Travis Etienne with a hamstring. I would suspect he's going to be back next week. And Tank Bigsby, in my opinion, has earned a shot at the starting job there. It will be interesting to see how they continue to divide up the workload in Jacksonville because, again, I do think that Tank Bigsby, when you're talking about who has been a better runner of the football this season, I feel like you have to say that Tank Bigsby has been quite a bit better. And so Etienne is going to come back and get the receiving work because Tank Bigsby has 1 total target on the season. And so his floor is going to be very low. I do think with the rest of the season, you're probably going to see Tank Bigsby put in spots to score touchdowns because he's a better runner than Etienne. So if they get down in the red zone, I would not be surprised if Tank Bigsby is the guy that they roll with there. And Dearness Johnson wasn't, he was productive as well. He had 10 points, but again, it was because he's being used as the receiving back. Brian Thomas, what else is there to say, man? This dude is electric. And he had 5 receptions. He caught all 5 of them, which for somebody who plays like Brian Thomas does, the amount of his balls that he brings in, it's honestly pretty impressive. You obviously saw on full display a ton of his skills that, obviously made him a super hot prospect in the NFL draft, and he has looked fantastic. Again, at price, he could end up being a league winner as well. He's the wide receiver 13 coming into this week. I'm going to be interested to see where he finishes the rest of the season. Christian Kirk, obviously, with a slow day, kind of trending downward the last 4 weeks for Christian Kirk, so we'll kind of see how that goes. Evan Ingram, 8 points, again, 5 targets, but didn't really do a ton with that. So Drake May obviously had a garbage time touchdown and ended up having 20 points too. But Thursday night, let's finish off with this. This game sucked, but the Broncos looked good. Javonte looked amazing. It's the best Javante's looked in his career, in my opinion. He had 2 touchdowns, his first multi-touchdown game in his career. Troy Franklin actually led the team in receiving, which I don't think that's going to continue. And then on the other side of the ball, Kamara had a slow night. You had Olave out. You had Shaheed out. You had Cedric Wilson come in, and he had 17 points on 7 targets. Not a ton there. Really not a ton there. And then so tomorrow we've got 2 games. We've got the Chargers, Arizona Cardinals game, and then we've got the Baltimore Ravens and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. I'm very excited for this one in particular, but a lot to learn about these guys. What we've got coming to you guys in the next couple days. We've got some guys you should be adding to your fantasy rosters based on performances this week, and obviously situationally as well, with injuries like Brandon Ayuk and things like that. And then we've got some buy candidates for you as well, depending on what type of fantasy team you have. So there you have it. And again, I think that things are starting to kind of settle in now as we get towards the end of the season. But top performers for this week are on the screen. It was a pretty fun week, honestly, and I think that as we continue to go through the season, you're going to see the ups and downs kind of even out a little bit, and I think that you should have a pretty good idea of what your fantasy team is now, and now is going to be the time to continue to make moves for your fantasy football team. So. Yeah, that's what I got for you tonight. Again, learned a ton today, but we do have 2 more games tomorrow, so it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out as well. But really appreciate you guys joining me. Again, video coming out first thing tomorrow morning. Make sure you got the noties on. It will send you an alert when we get the video out. It's being edited right now. So appreciate you guys so much. Have a good evening. Peace out.